The most successful real estate investors I know, including myself, act as their own general contractor. Now, since 2011, I've been investing in real estate and I've navigated through some pretty turbulent markets and ended up with over $25 million worth of real estate. And the reason I've survived more than anything else is the ability to manage my own projects, to act as my own general contractor. So today we're going to go through why I think that you should self-contract, how you actually pull that off, and finally, how you execute as a general contractor. And I want you to know this before we get right into it here, is that pretty much every fear you have as a real estate investor about losing money, about not having control and getting taken advantage of, losing your butt on a deal, it's pretty much all solved by just knowing how houses are put together and how to manage subcontractors. All right, so I guess that's kind of a lead into why you should be your own general contractor. Now, there's a few main points here. Number one is budget defense. All right, the biggest form of defense, therefore control in real estate, is managing projects, is setting a budget and actually being able to deliver anywhere close to that budget. I mean, most people blow up their budgets by 50% or better, I've seen. And the problem is they have no defense. They just put it in somebody else's hands. All right. And not only that, but a general contractor is charging anywhere from like 10 or 15% up to like 40 to 50%. You can save all that money by just going directly to subcontractors and hiring them. Okay, so number one was the budget defense. Most of the time, people go like 50% over budget. And honestly, general contractors don't have much incentive to not do that. Maybe your future business, but, actually the more money they spend on a project, the more money they end up making. So, not very directly or aligned in incentives. And number two is the markup savings, anywhere from like 15% up to 40 to 50%. You can cut out the middleman and have the direct savings and get what you want out of the subcontractors, which leads me to reason number three, which is misaligned goals. So most general contractors are built for homeowners, not for real estate investors. They are going to do like higher end projects for people who live in that house. And that takes like a whole different vision than what it takes for you as a real estate investor. You don't want to do like the crap they do on HGTV where they over renovate the houses and try to get these like super high prices for it. You want to deliver into the baseline. You have a vision as a real estate investor, not saying you want to do crappy work, saying that you want to do the right work. But they don't really understand that. That's not their game. That's your game as the real estate investor. So that means that anyway, you are the one setting the scope of work and confirming the scope of work. Well, that's like half the battle in being a general contractor. So you might as well be a general contractor. And reason number four is the control or risk management. Once again, incentives are not really aligned. And I think the only way to really be a successful real estate investor is to be able to play the defense that is your renovation budget. And if that's the biggest thing, okay, I'm not saying that you need to do everything, but I'm saying if that's the biggest thing, it should be in your hands. Okay. Next section, how to act as your own general contractor, how you actually pull it off. How do you get permits, licenses, and loopholes, I said, because there are some loopholes here. All right, so first is you need to understand the permit rules. This heavily depends on what municipality you're in, what state you're in, what county you're in, what the town that you're in requires. But I've lived in a lot of different places and done work in lots of different places. And for the most part, if you're doing anything more than a light cosmetic renovation on a house, they're going to require you to pull permits. Now, I'm not a Boy Scout, so I know that like things happen and not everybody pulls permits when they, quote unquote need to. They might be doing a heavy renovation that's inside of a house and they try to do it without pulling permits. Like I said, I have no opinion either way on that, but I'm saying that if you're doing the work you technically are supposed to have a permit. Now, if you're doing like an addition or something outside of the house, you certainly need a permit because you even want it. I know that some of you investors out there don't want to pull the permits because you don't want to open up the can of worms, whatever. But if you're doing something outside the house, like adding square footage, you want the permit because the permit allows you to go change the tax records to say that, oh, hey, now I have 2,000 square feet and now I have a higher value, therefore, when you go to sell the house. All right, so that's pulling permits. Generally, that's when you would need to pull permits. Now, there are 3 legal paths to being able to pull permits as the homeowner. One is most municipalities allow a homeowner to pull their own permits, but that is designed for them to do a renovation on their personal house. Therefore, it's not so easy to pull it on a house that you're investing in, unless you're like doing a house hack where you're living in the house, renovating it. Also, most municipalities have a rule where you can only do like one of those every year or 2 years. So you're really going to hit the ceiling pretty quick with that. Not really a viable path, maybe for your first project. Okay, so the next path is to actually get your GC license. And most places, most states have like a limited license, and then they have the full blown license. And here's what you're going to have to do. You are going to have to go take a test. You got to buy a bunch of books and you got to take a test. If you search this online, there are all kinds of different test helpers. And there's one that I personally used that I think they basically like go take the test and memorize the questions. So they have all kinds of practice tests that are almost like word for word what the test that you actually go and take are. And so if you have a good memory, you just kind of memorize them all. It's great, but it's an open book test anyway. You go in there with a huge stack of books. You get hours to go take this test. And, basically the studying is being able to look up the answers quickly because they don't expect a general contractor to know all of the codes. They expect them to know when and where to look for the codes. By the way, in practice, ChatGPT helps a lot with that. That's actually getting a license yourself. There's one more option, which is the consultation route, as I would call it. And that's where you find somebody who is a licensed general contractor, and you basically say, hey man, I want to do the work myself. I want to project manage the work. I want to bring in subcontractors or whatever, and I'll pay them directly. I want you to be my consultant. I want you to be the general contractor on this job that basically hires me as the only subcontractor, which is totally legal to do as long as you have whatever, insurance and licenses they need as a general contractor, but you can go get that stuff. And they're going to hire you. You're going to do the work, manage the subs or whatever. You'll pay them a fee because they actually are doing work. They'll go pull the permit. They're going to call in the inspections when you need them, and they'll come inspect before you call in the inspection. That's the consultation. So you're hiring them to be your boss, and that's okay to do. And it's kind of that consultation fee is nice for you because you probably don't know all the things that you need to know. And not only that, one more benefit is if you want to go get your own general contractor's license, a lot of times they require you to be able to show work experience as a general contractor. So there you go. You're also building up your work experience. That's actually how I ended up getting my general contractor's license. So I know that it works. Section 3, how do you actually execute as a project manager or a general contractor? Okay, especially if you don't know all the things to know about construction. A lot of people just walk into these houses and they're kind of like, okay, I got to do the floors, I got to do the paint, I got to do the drywall, I got to do mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and they kind of have all these jobs and they try to put them in order. And, there's a lot of swimming upstream, as I call it. Swimming upstream, and a crazy example, which I've seen happen, is that you get the drywall on, you painted, and then you realize, oh crap, we didn't finish the electrical updates inside of the walls. That means you got to tear open the walls and then do the electrical issues. That's swimming upstream. All right, so I have basically a 6-phase system that I use to manage these projects. And each job, as I call it, which would be a task like electrical rough-in is a job, is in the same phase every time. And this is like a dummy-proof setup, so that you never put yourself in a situation where you go upstream. I call it the jobs menu, but basically like in phase 1, we do what we call tabula rasa, which is a blank slate. We do all the framing, all the demo, all the clean out, all the structural work, any like leaking issues like roof, if siding or windows need done because they're letting water in. We would do all that in phase 1. So we stabilize the house. We have a blank slate. Now it's as close to new building as it possibly can be. Phase 2, we do all the utilities. That's, we call this one the gauntlet. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We do all of our rough inspections with the city, including the framing inspection. That's why we call it the gauntlet. And next is phase 3, the pregame. This is like floors, paint, drywall. This is basically floors, paint, drywall. Pre-game to the big game, which is phase 4, which is the installs. All right, this is going to be your trim, your doors, your maybe siding repairs on the outside of the house. We're going to do the kitchen installs here, the cabinets, countertops, backsplash. We're going to do the bathroom installs here, the shower, the vanities. All right, and then phase 5 is what we call the trim out, and that is related to the inspections. This is where you would do the electrical, plumbing, mechanical trim outs, meaning like light fixtures, plumbing fixtures. We would also do the hardware throughout, cabinet pulls, door handles. We would do other hardware, like on the outside of the house. You got it. Okay, phase 5 also, we'd put in the appliances. Then you have phase 6, the finale. This is where we do a construction cleanup, basically. And then I always put like a handyman line item on here because there's always punch list items that come up. So I just want to have some extra budget for it. But anyway, that's it. I do that. It's called the jobs menu. I have it on the website. Download it if you want. It's free, no problem. And that's how I dummy proof it and make sure that I don't get myself in some trouble. That's how you become your own general contractor. Highly suggest you do it. Getting the license is not as hard as you think. Getting the control is the key to this game. If you have to just put all of that in somebody else's hands, it's just not a good situation to be in. Ask people who have lost a lot of money. Hope you like this video. You need to check out this one next. Thanks for hanging out.